In a world where balancing business success and parenting can feel like mission impossible, the question we need to ask is, how are you really, Mum? Hi, I'm Sean Tucker, founder of Mum First, a coaching and business community dedicated to helping mums in business. And I'm here to bring you a unique podcast that's especially designed for you, the amazing business-minded mums who are juggling careers and family life seamlessly, or so it seems. Welcome to How Are You Really, Mum, the podcast where we dive deep into your challenges and your triumphs. From candid interviews with successful mums to practical advice and heartwarming stories, we won't shy away from tough conversations. Enjoy. Tune into How Are You Really, Mum, where we transform those taboos into everyday conversations. Subscribe now and let me help you carve out the space you need to nurture both your business ambitions and your family. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the How Are You Really, Mum podcast with me, Sean Tucker. And I'm here with an awesome lady from Brisbane today, and her name is Tu Dinh. Tu, she has sent me her bio, and I really want to read it out because she's a mother of two kids. And when she was younger, she was a bit of a rebel. Her parents made many sacrifices for her and her siblings to start a new life here in Australia. I mean, she wanted to become someone who is significant, but she struggled to focus, mostly because she lacked direction, goals, or purpose. Once she really discovered her passion for finance, she fell in love, and everything about it was just nice. So after becoming a lending manager, her life revolved around work, solely around work. And when her children came along, all she wanted to do was spend time with them. So it took a really long time to find the right balance. So Tu Dinh, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sean. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. I love that the first sentence you wrote for me to read out was that you were a rebel when you were young. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, nothing in comparison to Australians, obviously, but when I first came over, I was only 9 years old, and I struggled with the adapting. Communication was one of the main problems, I guess. And when my parents moved to a place where there wasn't a lot of Vietnamese, there is a community that supports each other, and we were probably one of the earliest immigrants here in Australia. So it wasn't the population wasn't as big as it is today. So I went to a school where there was no Vietnamese at all, and I sort of grew up and didn't really know what to do. I knew that I had to go to school, but I was just struggling in all different directions with not understanding English, and of course with all the other subjects that would suffer as well because you just don't know what the teacher is really saying to you.
Of course. I mean, that's a massive hurdle alone. How old were you when you first came to Australia?
I was 9 years old when I came, but I left Vietnam, I think was about 7.5, almost 8. Yeah.
So, did you speak any English at all?
Barely. It was my brother and sisters that spoke English because my parents were preparing them to go to Australia, and if we ever got an interview, then they would be the people that will be answering it. So they did go to a school to learn English, whereas me, I wasn't learning anything. So when I came over, I didn't lack any friends though, because I was a real novelty. There wasn't any Vietnamese, so I was like, oh yeah, this, she looks different.
She's one of the cool kids. I'm going to hang out with her.
Yeah, let's have her as a friend. She's very different. But
I love that.
When I grew up, it was just hard to find what you really love to do, Sean. And I can
Yeah.
really resonate with the children now. They have more guidance than I did. My parents was new in Australia. They were lost as well. So they wanted us to have a new life, and education was just the most important thing to them. But I just had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I really want. I enjoy. I went to school, had heaps of friends, and all we did was just hang out. And by the time high school finished, all I did was just partied and partied. And then I partied some more.
There's the rebel, the inner rebel coming
Yeah.
out, just wanting to party and have fun.
Way that we were dressing back in the in the 80s, we had Madonna and Michael Jackson, and there was a lot of fishnet and hair plaited where you pull all your hair off and lots of makeup. And my dad just couldn't cope with that, and he's going, I'm going to burn all your clothes.
Wow. So obviously pretty traditional.
Very
Your parents, pretty traditional.
pressure community as well, because you're not just answering to your parents, you're answering to the community. You're not allowed to do that. You're not going to nightclubs. Clubs is viewed as bad girls goes to nightclubs. So yeah, and I
Wow.
love the night. Nothing wrong with that, right?
No, that's right. And I think we all have to go on that path of sort of self-discovery, and oftentimes it's doing the things that are seen as, you're not supposed to do that, but it's called breaking the rules, right?
Yeah.
The only way you know about the rules is by breaking them.
Mm.
And sometimes you need to do that to find, the things that you really do care for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. And I love that you've gone on that journey. Yeah.
They had all sorts of problems. Everything about me was a problem, really. I started driving when I was 15. Every time my mum goes to work, and I would steal her car and drive around. Yeah.
Wow.
So by the time I think I was 17 or 18, when my mum goes, get a license, otherwise you're not driving anywhere. So that's when I got my license, but I was driving about 2 or 3 years before that. But, back in those days, people just break rules. It wasn't just me. Everyone breaks the rule.
Yeah. I mean, when you're young and you want to kind of be more responsible and take on more responsibilities, you do insensible things, right? It's not really about being sensible. You want that responsibility, so you'll do the insensible ways to get there.
Yeah. It's a curiosity. It's also being rebellious
Agree. Yeah.
against the traditional rules and, cultures, that expectation that this is how a proper girl, a nice girl should be. So I think it's more very rebellious and, not wanting
going against the grain, really.
Yeah, not where you're just labeled as this is who you are.
Yeah, and that speaks mountains for anyone listening. But when they're raising kids as well, because at some point in your journey, I mean, you sort of did find yourself. You found what you were passionate for in finance.
Yeah.
And you also summoned 2 children, right? How old are your kids now?
I've got 17. She just turned 17, and my son's 15. Yeah. So one's born in May and one is born in July. Friday the 13th. And I remembered when the doctor said to me, because she didn't want to come out, I was at 40 weeks, and I'm going, you need to come out. And I talked to the doctor, just induce me, get her out. She's 40 weeks old. So my doctor said, you're supposed to wait for a week or so, and if she still doesn't want to come out, then we'll just induce her. But I said, nope, take her out now. I want her to come out now. So we went in and induced her, and she was so placid. She was so easy. Raising her was just easy.
Yeah.
And and so she was born that way. And I remember the scheduled date was Friday the 13th. And I said to the doctor, I think you need to reschedule that day because I don't want a devil. I take her out on Friday the 13th. Yeah,
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
yeah, she did come out on Friday the 13th, and yeah, she's a
Sounds
beautiful.
like she's been a little blessing.
She's a blessing.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. But I'd love to ask, was it something that you always wanted to become a mum?
I hesitated for a long time. I met my husband when I was 25, and
Mm-hmm.
going to get married when I was 28, and I got really sick when I was 28, and then I decided, no, I just don't want to get married. But Hung's family is Catholic, and Mum and Dad was getting really worried that we were living together and not getting married. So they
Yeah.
kept saying, get married, get married. But I was going through a stage where I was losing so much weight. I think I was 38 kilos.
Oh,
And
wow.
down to 38 kilos. And I said, I don't want to get married looking like this. So we
Mm.
hold off. And eventually I just got sick of the whole idea of it because his family's in Sydney, my family's in Brisbane, getting them to, I'm Buddhist, he's Catholic. So there was all these differences and I was just really over it. So let's not get
Wow.
married.
And that's quite untraditional, right?
Yeah,
Is bringing two very, very different belief systems together. I
exactly. It
mean,
was difficult.
challenging.
So, yeah. So we got together. Hung always as soon as we got together and decided, okay, we're not going to get married. We're going to have children. So I was only 25. But once my career took off, all I really wanted to do was work. I just work 7 days a week. You can put me into an office for 7 days a week. I can sleep there and wake up and work again. I was just there all the time. So by the time ANZ Mortgage Solutions came along and I took the opportunity, that really took off in the first couple of years. My business was just going up, elevated
Mhm.
quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I remember, and Hung was never, like he wanted children, but he never pushed the issue. It was just, okay, whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
And I've never talked about it. So whether I have a feeling that I think that I was never going to get old. I was never
Yeah.
too old to have children. I can go on like this forever. That was my thinking. And he sat down one day and he said to me, I was 36 at the time, and Hung says to me, if there's any inkling at the back of your mind, just a little bit, that you wanted children, better think about it now. Because we just don't have the time. Like, I mean, I had health issues at the time. I didn't know whether I could conceive. And he said, if
Yeah.
we don't know whether you could get pregnant, you're 36, it might take us years before you're able to get pregnant or not pregnant at all. So if something at the back of your mind and you think one day I'm going to have children, it's going to be right now, today. Think about it. And it really hits home then that oh my God, I'm 36 already. I'm not 21 anymore. And
Yeah.
so we decided to have children, and I got Portia straight away.
Isn't that magnificent though?
Yeah.
Like,
But she, I remembered when I got her and the feeling of having like when she came out, I was expecting this exhilarating feeling of love bursting out, and I didn't have that. I
interesting.
I didn't have that connection. I didn't have, and I said to the nurse, yeah, I want to carry my baby. I carried her, and I carried her like I was carrying my niece, someone that I love, but I feel like I was able to. I feel like maybe I can give her back to someone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she bonded pretty quickly with Hung. Hung's very good with the kids when they were young, and he took over with everything. And we came down to Sydney to visit Hung's parents. And I remembered that Hung went out for about 5 minutes with his dad. I was carrying her and she was crying. And she was just couldn't stop her. Everyone tries to calm her down, cuddle her, do everything with her. She was just crying. And Hung's dad, and then Hung came in, heard her cry, went into the room, picked her up. I took her from me and she just, all quiet. And I'm going, oh my God, this is embarrassing.
That's a lot to take on, right? Because how do you feel about this child that's literally been part of you for 40 weeks plus, comes out and you don't have that kind of connection that this is my baby, right?
Exactly.
I'm sure many listeners and viewers and mums out there have experienced something very similar, right? Because depending on which kind of philosophy or region you're coming from, I mean, your husband's from that sort of Catholic background, you're from more of the Eastern Buddhist background, right? So there's different sort of belief systems of things like reincarnation and these kind of things. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that that child comes through both of you, has chosen to come through both of you, and there's some sort of plan that it wants to achieve in this. There's some sort of purpose, right? And we've started off on purpose and got to this point because oftentimes the roles that we play are not traditional. And what I mean by that is if this kid is bonding more with your husband and you're really trying to be the one that requires or wants that bond, it's only going to cause you mental suffering because the child's blueprint or the plan for the child or the purpose of the child is that it's on its own journey, right? It is your child, but it's also not your child at the same time. Like it's a child from God or God as the universe, whatever you want to kind of call it. But it's really interesting that you've had that experience and that it took probably time or maybe even just, what do you think it was for you do you feel like you still have that really strong bond with your daughter now, or is it still a little bit distant? Like, how would you see that now?
Our relationship is very strong at the moment. I think it's built from the time that she learned to talk and walk because my husband wasn't good in that department.
Interesting.
He's good. He's great. He's amazing. Like, I mean, at nights when she cries, he's the one that gets up. He does everything from the time she was born to the time that she starts walking. And she's still very close to her dad. That bond's never been broken, but I'm the one that she goes to about everything. If she feels down, if she wanted to talk about certain things that happens or she's struggling with things, I'm the go-to person, not Dad. Dad is someone that she'll come for a cuddle. Mum is someone that she comes to spend time with, to share her experience, her emotional feelings. So I think that kicked in when she started able to talk and we're able to play games together. And I think the initial bond, the initial part was because I wasn't ready. I was always
interesting. Yeah.
I was always focused on my career, and children was always on the back burner and never been brought back forward until my husband put it into a situation where it really clicked, and I said, I think I need to have children. And then I had Portia, and when she came out, she was just a really easy, happy child. And I thought, wow, I can have 1,000 of these, like.
Sounds pretty independent.
Yeah, pump
in
them
many ways.
out. Hung
Well,
takes care of me, and I still continue to work. Happy days.
yeah. And how much of that happened for you? I mean, obviously you did develop that really nice, close emotional bond that every mother probably yearns for with their child. But it took
Mm,
time.
it
And
took
like you
a long
said,
time.
you probably weren't ready for it when it came. And I think it's so relevant because there's a lot of things that happen for this baby to become into the world, for it
Yeah.
to really come into the world. Like the life process is really phenomenal. And when we are still focused on something outside of us, like our career, which still fulfills us internally, right? When we're still really focused on achieving things in our life, well, our priorities don't change. Our value system don't change that easily. And that's why it takes time for the system or the human system just to process, such a really expansive thing to happen. Because a child is no joke. It's a huge responsibility. And I'm sure you had to probably learn that the hard way in the first few months, even first year, right?
I did.
Yeah. And how much, I guess, for the new mums out there now who are probably still struggling, what was the moment that sort of kicked in that for you was like, everything's going to be okay?
I think the first time was that I acknowledged that she needed me was, I think she might have been 3 or maybe even 4. And always as the first child, you sort of experiment them. You want the best for your kids, so therefore you're you're trying everything
Yeah.
to make sure that you're doing the right thing, but I think you end up doing the wrong thing because you're putting pressure on the child. I want the best things for you. I'll do this. You've got to do that. You've got to do this. But I think at the end, you're just I was putting too much pressure on her.
Yeah.
And I remember that night very clearly when we were sitting at that table, and she looked at me and she was teary. She was very young, really young. And we looked at each other and she has these tears rolling off her eyes. And I just
You're
backed
giving me
off.
goosebumps, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just backed off. And I said to my husband the next day, I will never do that again to my child. And that was it. I just released and relaxed and became a more relaxed mum and an enjoyable mum to be around. And yeah, that was the turning point for me, is that I needed to be a supportive mum and be there for her rather than trying to guide her too early, making her doing things that is not relevant for her age, really.
Yeah. And when we have, I mean, there's two roles fundamentally that I think every child kind of needs from their parents, right? Is that there's provider and there's a nurturer. And those roles they're not gender specific roles, right? They're interchangeable. And you might be more of a nurturer primarily, but need to be a provider at certain points, right? Provider, protector. I mean, traditionally it's the man who's the provider and the protector, and the mum would be the nurturer. But it's the more people that I speak to is it's not the case. It's just we have this kind of social stigma that this is the way that it is, and the more people you speak to, the less true it becomes. So it's interesting that you've had to go through that, because it sounds like there was a point in you, or there was something in you that was emotionally unavailable for her to attach to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that feeling of safety, and that probably was a huge pain for you, right? And that's probably why it wasn't comfortable to lean into that at that moment.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure every single mum and dad goes through something similar,
Yeah.
because we want kids, let's say, because that's why we've chosen to become a parent. Some of us maybe don't want kids and still end up with kids, and that's okay too. But
Yeah.
my point being is that it's a big responsibility, and it takes that lived experience, not just words from someone you know
Yes.
or learning from a book, to
Mm.
really know what that means. And it took a while for you, right? You're saying 3 or 4 years that moment came along, and it really probably opened your heart in many ways. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that is really profound. If I can ask a question from your second child's perspective, so your son, right, who came a little bit later, was it similar for him, or was it a little bit different, the relationship that you had between mother and son?
I had Jaden when I was 2 years later. I actually lost a child before him,
I'm so sorry to hear that.
and it I it was only about 12 weeks. We went to the specialist and checked the heartbeats and everything. Everything was all good. And
Yeah.
then the next day, there was no heartbeats anymore. So that was a real shock.
Mm,
A long time to get over it.
yeah.
And so when Jaden came along, it sort of alleviated that loss for me. I mean, anybody that goes through it probably would understand.
It's a horrible experience.
Yeah, it's a horrible experience.
We went through one as well, and it's nothing that it's not really spoken about very, very much. And I love that you brought it up, because
Mm,
a lot of people go through it. Like, the statistics are quite ridiculous on how many people actually have them, right?
mm,
And it's not at the fault of the parents.
yeah.
It just wasn't meant to be,
Mm.
and that's okay.
I think at that time you do question, what did I do wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when the um, doctor removed the fetus, you sort of,
Yeah.
did I do the right thing? She actually checked to see whether that's absolutely 100%. So you question all that.
Mm.
So it was a rough time. Then Hung's dad passed away, and I always say that Hung's dad always wanted a grandchild, a boy.
Mm.
Hung's the only child in Australia, and Hung's dad wanted a grandchild as a boy. And anyway, we prayed to Dad and says, "Oh, we really like a boy this time." And he came along. I conceived him. Portia was a great pregnancy. I had no problems with Portia. Jaden's the totally opposite. Anything that
Yeah.
Portia, Jaden's totally opposite. By 12 weeks or something, I think 12 weeks, my uterus sort of flipped and it just locked. Yeah, and I had to go into the hospital and lie with my face down for about 2 weeks. And miraculously, it turned around again.
Horrific. Wow.
Yeah, so we went for a holiday over to New Zealand, came back, and Hung says to me, "Do you want to go take Portia out to the park?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." They got dressed and everything, and I just said to Hung, "I'm feeling really sick." And he goes, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm just feeling really sick." So Hung goes, "Oh, okay, I'll take Portia out and you can stay home and rest." And by the time Hung came back, I said, "I think you need to take me to the hospital." And I got to the hospital, and the next thing I know, they wanted to take him out. And having lost one baby, I just said, "No, you're not taking him out. He's only 26 weeks. He's not ready." So they sent me a doctor, which is he was brilliant. He sat there with me for 24 hours, and he
Wow.
monitored my blood pressure so that I don't have to take him out. And they gave me all the injections to mature his lung. And normally, if you're lucky enough, you get one shot. I was lucky that I got 2 shots. Jaden was well and ready, but I still didn't want to take him out. And I said to the doctor, if you can monitor my blood pressure for as long as you can, just so that he can get over the 30 weeks, that would be great. And he said, I'll try. And he did. He monitored me 24 hours. When he goes home, he didn't hand me over to anyone. He just said, something goes wrong with Tu during the night, call me. So he was just 24 hours on me.
Yeah.
And then there was a procedure called sulfuric. I can't remember what the procedure called, but it protects the baby's brain. And he said to me, you want to have a go? We might have a couple of hours, but if we can get a couple of hours in, at least you get the baby gets a little bit of a protection for his brain when he comes out. And I said, great, yeah, let's do it. And then I actually got 24 hours and the blood pressure went from 220 right down to normal.
Mm-hmm.
We're going, oh, holy cow, we're normal again. So I thought that I was going to take the baby back to, to full term. But the next night or something, it just went up to 250 on, it was just 106.
Wow.
So my doctor says, can't do this anymore. It's going to kill you both. You've got to get him out. So he got out at 27 weeks. When they took him up, pull him up like this and go, here he is. And I looked at him and I go, oh my God, he's normal. I thought, what am I going to get? Am I going to get a baby with no eyes, no legs, no...
Wow, what a journey to that is intense. That's the word I would use, intense. If you have a blood pressure of 250, like that's insane. That is insane.
I was taken away and he was taken away. We were separated and I couldn't feed him. I couldn't do anything. I was really frustrated. But as soon as he was taken out, my blood pressure went back to normal. That was him that creating the problem again.
He just wanted to come out and say hi.
Come out. He didn't want to come out. He wanted to come out.
Wow.
So he was in the ICU for probably about 13 weeks. He was well, and then he became really sick and was in there for 13 weeks. During that 13 weeks was the most amazing time that we've had together because for sure, my little daughter was cared by Hung, and every day I would go in there after work, 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, I'm in there, and then I would nurse him and talk to him and sing to him, read to him till about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd drive home. It was just routine. There was one particular day that I got in not that late. So I was driving, trying to find a car park, and the nurse called, and I could hear the baby screaming loud and sing his lungs. And the nurse says to me, are you coming in today? Because normally, sometimes mums don't come in, and there's sugar mums in there that actually help care for the baby. I can't calm him down. And I said, I'll be in there soon. So I parked the car and I bolted in and it got down the elevator and I can hear the baby screaming. I didn't know he was so loud. So I got in, the door open, and I could see her trying to calm him and holding him. And I ran in, I put my hand on him and he just went quiet. And then I'm going, wow, look at this. This is mum and son's bond. This is amazing that he actually knows when I'm supposed to be in. But when I wasn't there, he was just crying out, where is my mum?
Wow. And that is, once again, you gave me goosebumps because what you just said there, I mean, it's at such a deep unconscious level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you were on this routine schedule that was happening and even though the baby's circadian rhythm, like it's not really aware of what is night and day, but there's just something about that attachment, that
Yeah.
kind of really deep energetic attachment or unconscious attachment to you. You weren't there when you were supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And the boy needed his mum,
Yeah.
didn't feel safe, and was literally crying the whole hospital down.
Mm. That's it. Yeah. So
Wow.
I have two different experiences with two babies.
Yeah. And what an experience. And well, the third one as well, the one in between, right?
Yeah.
Because that is a huge grieving process that anyone who goes through something like that will go through.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes when we just suppress it and don't talk about it and just see it as something that we don't talk about, it didn't happen. I think that's when people carry their grief and they end up becoming really, really depressed or really, really angry because these children that don't make it, these little fetuses that become children don't make it as children. Maybe they weren't meant for this lifetime, and that's okay. But it's still something that you have to go through internally as a grieving process. And for that to happen, it requires a lot of support. You need to feel safe enough to let those emotions come out of you, because holding on to them, it just causes a lot more grief than the grief of the child or the grief of the unborn child. And it's not anything that I would wish for on anyone, any mum. And the amount of miscarriages that do happen, and sometimes one after the other, right? Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 miscarriages to have one child. And I'm sure there's parents out there or mums out there who have experienced more.
Yeah.
And then there's the parents and the mums out there who don't even want a child. They just have unprotected, intercourse, and it turns into a child, and then 1 comes 2 and 2 becomes 3, and it's like,
Why?
people trying so hard to get what they want. But what I said earlier about, there's this sort of plan that's unfolding and this purpose of us being here in this life, right? That moment when your boy Jaden was just screaming, he felt unsafe. He felt unprotected. And you were that, beacon of light, of hope for him, that safety net where he just, as soon as you touched him, his whole physiological system just calmed down. That's what you call magic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. No,
Oh,
people talks about it sometimes you go, oh, really? But yeah, once you experience,
yeah. I mean, it
Um,
kind of begs the question, because you're a lady who really does care about, your career and achieving your ambitions and really turning your purpose into passion. So, I mean, how does someone like you really balance that? Because it sounds like you are there for your kids, but you're also a career woman, right? How do you balance that? How do you navigate the balance or the blend, as one of my previous guests has actually mentioned, instead of it being balanced, because she really didn't believe that balance was achievable, the blend of the two, balancing or blending career with motherhood?
Yeah. I think by that time, I was still Jaden's a very difficult baby. He was very antisocial. I remembered when he came home, I was carrying him in that carrier, the baby carrier, because he
Yeah.
didn't want to be with anyone. He didn't really want to be with his dad. But 3 months in the hospital with just me and him,
Yeah.
goes out into the world and he doesn't want to see anybody. He doesn't want to be touched by his dad. So I carried him on me while I was working. It was quite intense. And my mum used to come over and said to me, "You can't do that. You're spoiling him." But mum didn't really know what he was going through. I sort of felt he was going through so much. in the hospital on his own. He just needed to feel safe around his mother. And that's how I
Yeah.
did it. I just carried him for a long, long time. And I remember when he was 2 years old, no one can get close to him. No one. And when we were having his second birthday, everyone was coming over, and normally he would just cling on to me. But that day he decided, I'll get off, Mum. And I said, oh, okay. I was just like, oh my God, thank goodness you're getting off. And he actually walked off. And I remembered my sister or somebody was getting really excited and go, oh, he's actually getting off his mum. So they ran up to him and he goes, oh, I'm just getting off, Mum, but I don't want to be near you. And that was him for a long time as well. It's just a social issue with him.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think by the time he was in prep, maybe kindergarten, I felt he needed more time with me. I had to make a sacrifice basically that
Yeah.
he needs to be having more time with Mum, who's going to take him places, meet people, and provide that confidence in him, rather than just getting him into childcare. Here you go, going to childcare when he's not really ready. He didn't like it
Yeah.
in there. He wasn't ready. So by the time he was in kindergarten, I decided to slow down my work and focus on my two kids. And being more at the school, I volunteered for the school. I went and met all the mums, all the friends, organized. Instead of working all the time, I was organizing play dates, getting him in that confidence and trusting people. So I think at that time, instead of focusing on my career, I slowed that down and focused on them.
Yeah. You really looked at your priorities, right? Because you knew, even if it wasn't necessarily fully conscious of how much that boy really needed you to feel safe. Because, I mean, I'm sure there's so many adults out there that still don't feel safe. You know, they don't really know what home is because maybe their parents didn't create that space of safety.
Yeah.
And you instinctively or intuitively or just somehow knew because you'd gone through that experience as well. And I think maybe the pinpoint moment was when that nurse called you and could not calm your baby boy, right? There was just that really special connection that he had with you, that he felt like home. He felt safe.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people out there that just don't know what home feels like because they've never felt safe before. And I think what you said there is when you noticed that and you took it as one of your highest priorities, because once you know it, you can then let it happen, right? If you were trying to be the ambitious career woman as well as the mum, right, it's not going to work.
No.
You can't simply do 100% focus on one thing and 100% focus on the other thing, or 50% here and 50% there. Either you're present with one thing and not the other, or that's it. Like
Right.
you can't do both. So I'd love to know, like, for the parents that are really struggling or maybe juggling with that now, what was the thing that allowed you to make that decision of, okay, I'm going to take a step back? Was it that, your boy just didn't feel safe and he was really clingy with you? Or was it the people around you saying, like, you need to take a step back? Was it something that came from inside you? Like, what was it for you two?
It was important for me to raise kids that are content and happy. And my kid wasn't there. So the turning point for me was if parents are struggling with their balancing that career, I think the most important thing is to sit down and prioritize what's important.
Yeah,
Money,
figure out what's most important.
money,
Yeah.
yes, there's a lot of money to be made, but only got one
Mm.
chance with your children. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
I didn't want time to be slipping away either. As they're growing up, you're losing that time with them, focusing on work. Well, work is always going to be there. Money's always going to be there. When is it going to be enough? But if you really screwed up with your children, you've lost that chance. You've lost it. A lot of parents don't realize it.
Yeah.
I'll give an personal experience is that I grew up in a family where my mum and dad had to work. They came over here and they've got no option. My mum was working all the time. They were never home. I love my parents. I don't have
Mm.
that emotional connection with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where parents go. I feel that's where parents go wrong is that when they think that, yes, I'll go to work, I'll provide you with this, you've got that, you've got a house, you've got shelter, you've got, we take you places. That's not what they want. They want
Yeah, it's that.
experience. They want time with you, and time is what we're all selfish of. And
Correct. Yeah.
I just decided that, okay, we'll just have less money and more time with our kids. And that's always been our priority for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Like that in itself takes a lot of courage because history repeats itself. And what I mean by that is our parents are living the life that their parents gave them, right? And a lot of it came from scarcity and war and fear, and it just continues to breed that. And it takes a lot of awareness and a lot of willingness to have to change it because, if you have that unmet need of wanting to be loved by your parents and wanting that emotional connection, well, you didn't get it, right, as a kid. And sometimes we fall into the same patterns that our parents gave us.
Yeah.
So we want to be emotionally available, but we can't. And, it's probably similar for your parents. Like they wanted to be, but at the time they needed to provide. They needed to do this thing to give you guys the life that they didn't have. And it just keeps going down that chute. But ultimately, I love what you've said because it allows the parents out there to realize that they have the power to change. If they want their kids to have a better life, well, you got to be responsible, understand what your priorities and what's most important to you. Because if raising kids and taking on the responsibility of being a parent, not just letting the kid be raised by anyone, it takes a lot of courage. So I really appreciate what you said there.
Thank you, Sean.
No problem. Well, we're actually coming to the end of the podcast, and I really appreciate you so much for being here. So, I mean, is there anything for the new mums out there, if you look back right now and said, if I only knew this, I think the struggles would be less? Is there any kind of words of wisdom that you can give the new mums, new dads out there?
First, 5-7 years, have fun. Have fun. Just relax and enjoy your time with them. Like when they were in prep and in grade 1, we were just thinking, oh, well, you've got to go to school. Well, do they really? Can we just take a year off and just travel when they were at that age when they can feel, experience, and see and curious? Isn't that just a great time to take them out and explore the world and have that year off or a couple of months off? If I have that time again, I would do that. But at that time, I just thought education, you've got to go to school. It's time to go to school. But
sometimes you've got to be the rebel and go against the rules and go against the grain of what society kind of says you must do. So, I mean, that
but when
I
went to a conference in Uluru and Jaden was 7 years old. And my friends got a 7 years old as well. They're actually in the same grade at the same school. now. And she said, do you want to take Jaden along and they can both hang out? And I said, oh, yeah, all right. So I asked Jaden, do you want to come for a week with Mum at Uluru and you can hang out with a new friend? And he says to me, no, I've got to go to school, Mum. And now he's going, oh, my God, how silly was that? Why didn't I take the opportunity to just go and have fun for a week? Why did I choose school over Uluru? But I think that was probably the way that he was taught, that you've got to go to school. You've got to go to school. So he just chose school. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think the most important thing would be just to have fun with them, be present. Sometimes when I work, and regardless, well, I still fall into it. I'm not going to say it happens 100%, but you get really stressed. You have a whole day of full-on work. Your children comes home, really excited about all these things that happen at school, want to discuss it with you, and you're sitting there and you're nodding your head blankly. You're not even there. And they go, you didn't even hear a word I said, did you, Mum? And that is so true. So they've said that to me a couple of times. And whenever I do that, I think 5 o'clock, when they're home, shut everything down and spend, half an hour with them and really be there, because they really want to talk and you want them to be able to talk to you about their day or your day. That's just really important. Have
Yeah.
with
Be
them.
present.
Be present. Yeah,
No,
be present.
That's so key. And I love that you said that. So, Tu, thank you so much for being here today with me. I really, really do appreciate it, and sharing, some really deeply personal stories that you and your husband and your family have all gone through. So thank you so much. For our listeners and for our viewers, I just want to be very quick here. And, for anyone who wants to contact you, how's the best way to contact you, Tu?
My name's Tu Dinh.
Or connect with you.
With me,
Yeah.
Tu Dinh. Should I send a LinkedIn in the chat?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll basically just put all of your links for them to connect with you on the show notes as well, so they can easily connect with you. And if they're around Brisbane, or if they're up in Queensland, of course, and they're looking for a home of some sort, they'll absolutely reach out to you.
Thank you, Sean. It's been such a pleasure to be on your show, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And you're an amazing host. You got it out of me. You almost got me in tears. So.
Thank you so much, Tu Dinh, for being here. And look, if you really love this episode, please make sure you give it a 5-star rating. And if you want Tu Dinh to come back on the show, please make sure you leave a comment below the show and we'll make it happen. So thank you, and we'll see you next time in the next episode. Have a beautiful weekend or a beautiful day.
Don't miss out on each episode released weekly. Hit that subscribe button and join our community today. Because remember, we're in this together, Mum.